Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah Falbo. I'm a longtime writing teacher who has coached over 100 students through this process of college essay writing over the last 5 years. I'm here to offer you some pointers. You may be wondering, why do I have to write this anyway? What is the purpose? Well, I'm referring specifically to the common application essay in this presentation. It has a 650 word limit with a little over a page, single spaced. It's essentially a writing sample, but you should think of it as the only part of your application that you have complete control over. It's a great chance for the schools to hear your voice. It's an opportunity to show them something about you that they can't learn anywhere else in your application. Incidentally, too, there are 6 prompt choices. I advise my students not to get too hung up in which prompt to choose. They're all very open-ended. They all encourage reflection. I think it's better to choose your topic first and then find the prompt that best matches. So I wouldn't worry too much about the prompts early on. Who will be reading this essay and why? Your essay will be read by college admissions counselors. You'll probably never meet them. So you're used to writing papers for your teachers. But in this case, I think it's best to pretend you are writing a story to a favorite teacher or a mentor as you write. So it's important that this essay stays in your voice, this personal essay. Now, you also want to remember to sound like your smartest self. Don't include slang. But on the other hand, don't worry about thesaurus words or flowery language, and really try to avoid what I call resume-ish phrases. And let me give you a few examples of those. Instead of saying, I utilize a variety of analytical techniques to solve problems. Instead, just say that you are a good problem solver. Instead of saying, I demonstrate a high degree of originality and creativity. Call yourself creative or an original thinker. In other words, just speak in plain English. It's a lot easier to understand, and you won't be trying to sound like someone you're not. Changes due to COVID-19. Specifically this year, you probably have heard about quite a few schools who have gone test optional. And some of them have said that they don't want test scores at all from this year because of the difficulty many of you have had taking the exams. Now, because of that, the SAT and ACT score was such a big quantitative piece that I've heard from admissions counselors who are saying that now, this time around, it will be more qualitative. So chances are they'll be taking an even closer look at parts of your application like the essay. Another thing that's new this year is that the Common Application has added an optional 250-word response, asking the question, how has COVID-19 affected you or your family? Now, I would advise that you ought not to respond to this question if you have had common complaints from this quarantine school stoppage, for example, that you missed your friends, teachers, teammates, missing a whole season if you play a spring sport. Instead, and I hope this is not the case, but in case you have experienced extreme family hardship, loss of a loved one, that would certainly be appropriate for this response. But otherwise, like I said, if they're very common complaints or concerns that you've experienced this spring, I would not respond to that question. Common topic misconceptions. These are statements that are advice that you may or may not have heard from, I'm sure, well-meaning neighbors, maybe even parents, teachers. You may have heard, write about the most dramatic thing that has ever happened to you. Instead, I would definitely emphasize the reflection, not the drama. A friend of mine in this business likes to say, small story, big reflection. You only have 650 words. So it often takes way too many words to get caught up in a big dramatic story. Secondly, pick a topic that is completely unique. when you think that many of these admissions counselors will be reading 50 of these essays a day, that is almost impossible. Instead, think about making your topic unique by including concrete details and using your own writing voice. Third, write about a relative or a mentor. Unless you keep the focus on how this person has influenced you and what you've learned from them, otherwise it becomes a character study and it's not enough about you. And finally, you may have heard people telling you to avoid writing about a quirky or nerdy interest. This I've actually found in my experience that sometimes following this advice can lead to some of the most interesting, memorable essays. For example, I'll give you 3 quick examples. One is I had a student write about coming across a series of these homemade superhero booklets that he called the Super Penguin books that he had made in elementary school. And he talked about how his life had changed since then. I had a student write about her obsession with Marie Kondo, how her friends teased her and her parents about how she was so neat and she loved to organize. And I had a student write about coin collecting. Again, these are small topics that led to some really interesting reflective essays. 3 essential ingredients for an effective essay. This is important that your essay have all 3 of these elements. For the core values, we'll talk about next. This is really trying to go to the heart of who you are, what's most important to you. And I'll show you an example in the next slide, but you want to choose 1 to 3 of your most important traits or characteristics to highlight in this essay. Anecdote. The best way to show your core values will be from a true story or a scene from your life, preferably over the last 4 years since you've been in high school. And finally, reflection. You've heard me say this already a number of times in this presentation. Personal essays reflection is such an important part of this. This is basically explaining what you've learned from your anecdote and why your core values are so important to you. And that's the best way for these admissions counselors to learn about who you really are. Here are examples of core values. There's many more that I've missed, but here are some big ones that often factor in personal essays: social justice, ecological awareness, vulnerability, curiosity, integrity, empathy, just to name a few. So now hopefully you feel ready to begin brainstorming your topic. The 2 most important questions you need to focus on are, what do I want colleges to know about me? And again, that list of core values is a really good place to start. Also be thinking about what they already know about you from the rest of your application. You probably want to start by listing all of your most important activities, volunteer opportunities, favorite classes, sports. Think about what they're already going to know about you, and then what do you want to share with them? And finally, what specific story from my life best shows this? Again, go small, go specific, lots of concrete details. If you find you still want more help in this process, I'm happy to help. You can check out my website at helpwithcollegeessays.com. You can contact me. Here's my Verizon email. I typically work with students one-on-one. This year we've gone to Zoom meetings. We work with a shared Google document. I have a package that most of my students can complete their common application essay in 3 sessions. I also help with supplemental essays as you get further into the process. My final thought to leave with you is to try to think of this process as an opportunity, not a chore. And happy writing. Thank you.